My name is Derek, and I'm going to tell you about the worst job I ever had. Pizza delivery doesn't sound scary. You pick up some boxes, you drive to someone's house, you hand them food and collect money. Simple, right, wrong. That job showed me things. It put me in situations. It made me understand that the scariest people don't announce themselves. They live in normal houses on normal streets, and they do normal jobs. And sometimes they order pizza. This all happened in the mid-2000s. I was working at a Pizza Hut about 15 minutes from where I lived. It was rural out there, not much around except trees and farmland and houses spread out far from each other. I worked mostly nights because that's when the deliveries ramped up. I would make somewhere between 5 and 6 deliveries a night, sometimes more when we got busy on weekends. The pay was okay, enough to live on if you didn't have expensive tastes. I want you to understand something. Pizza delivery in rural areas is different than in the city. In the city, you go to apartment buildings. There's people around, there's lights and noise and life. Out in the country, the houses are isolated. Some are miles apart. When you drive out to one of those places late at night, it's just you and the darkness and someone you've never met before. I started keeping a pocket knife in my back pocket after the first few weeks. Most of my customers were older people, retired folks living out in the middle of nowhere. But some of them looked at me strange, like they weren't used to seeing young people, like I was something exotic, something they wanted to study. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was just tired from work, but the feeling never went away. It was a Saturday night, one of the busiest nights we had. We were slammed all evening. I must have made 10 or 11 deliveries already. I was exhausted. My shift was supposed to end at midnight, and I kept checking the clock, hoping that no more orders would come in. At 11:15, I was standing in the back talking to the guys making pizzas, just killing time, waiting for my shift to be over. Then the phone rang. My boss shouted at me to answer it. He always got mad when people called in late. He thought they were pranks. But business was business. I walked over to the counter reluctantly. The caller ID said private number, which was unusual, but I picked up anyway. The guy on the phone was already yelling before I could even finish my greeting. He wanted 5 extra large pepperoni pizzas with mushrooms. He was throwing a party. A high school reunion, he said. There were lots of people to feed. He gave me his address. It was about 15 minutes away. He emphasized not to be late. His guests hadn't eaten anything yet. I took the order and hung up. Part of me wanted to complain to my boss about working late, but I was getting paid for the overtime. And if I'm being honest, there was a small part of me that was excited. A party meant meeting new people, maybe even meeting some girls. It was stupid, but that's what I was thinking at the time. About 15 minutes later, I grabbed the 5 boxes of pizza and loaded them into my car. The guy had ordered exactly what he said. 5 extra large pepperonis with mushrooms. I plugged his address into my GPS and started driving. The GPS took me through some back roads where there weren't many houses, just trees on both sides. Forest preserve. Nothing but darkness and the occasional headlight from another car. The drive took longer than expected. The roads were winding and narrow, but eventually I started to see signs of civilization. Lights in the distance. The GPS led me to a secluded house set back from the main road. When I pulled into the driveway, I could see the house clearly. Lights were on inside. I could see silhouettes behind the windows, people moving around, the glow of party lights filtering through the curtains. It looked like a real party was happening in there. I grabbed the pizza boxes from the passenger seat and walked toward the porch. The front door opened before I could even knock. A man was standing there. He looked like he was maybe my age, maybe a little younger, but something was off about him. He looked hollow. His eyes were dark. He had this sunken look like he hadn't slept in days, like he was sick or depressed or going through something really bad. He asked me if I was the pizza guy. I said yes. He told me to come inside and put the pizzas on the living room table. He reminded me not to forget the mushrooms. I said of course not. I was hesitant about going inside. That's the thing about delivering pizza to private homes. You have to be careful. But he seemed harmless enough. Just a guy throwing a party. And I was curious. I wanted to see who was at this party, maybe meet some people. So I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. I walked through the foyer toward the living room. And then I stopped. My stomach dropped. I couldn't process what I was seeing at first. The living room was full of people, dozens of them, maybe 100, all standing around, all looking at me. But they weren't moving. They weren't talking. They were just standing there. And as my eyes adjusted to the light, I realized they weren't real. They were mannequins. Full-sized, realistic mannequins, dressed in party clothes, standing in groups like they were having conversations, like they were a real party. I felt the man come up behind me. He was very close. I could hear him breathing. He told me to put the pizzas down and say hi to his guests. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. My mouth was dry. I tried to stutter out something, but the words wouldn't come. The man laughed. He said they all wanted me to join them for the pizza party. I told him I had to go. I told him I had other deliveries to make. It was a lie, but I needed to leave. I needed to get out of that house. That's when the man slowly lifted his shirt. There was a handgun tucked into his pants. A real gun. Metal and dark and deadly looking. He wasn't pointing it at me yet, but it was there. It was visible. It was a statement. He told me to grab one of the pizzas. He told me to feed it to someone named Gerald. My entire body went cold. This wasn't a party. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. This was something very wrong. I opened one of the pizza boxes with shaking hands. I grabbed a slice. The pepperoni and mushrooms felt greasy and warm in my fingers. The man was pointing at the mannequins, telling me which one was Gerald. I walked over to one of them and raised the slice to its face. I smeared the pizza across its plastic features. The toppings fell to the ground. The man raised the gun and fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The mannequin's head exploded. Plastic fragments sprayed everywhere. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. I crouched down instinctively. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the pizza box. The man was laughing. He said that wasn't Gerald. That was George. He pointed to another mannequin. He told me I was an idiot. He said Gerald was to the right. I was crying now. I couldn't help it. I told him I didn't know which one was which. I begged him not to shoot me. I said anything he wanted. Just please don't shoot me. He told me they weren't mannequins. They were people, just like him and me. He said I could tell they enjoyed the pizza. He said they wanted me to keep going. He told me to lick the tomato sauce off of George's face. I did it. I walked over to the headless mannequin, and I licked the pizza sauce off its body. The taste was salty and bitter, and I wanted to vomit, but I swallowed it down. The man said that was good. He said I was pretty. He laughed while I did it. When I was done, I asked him if I could leave. He said sure, but only if I promised to deliver his next pizza personally. I said okay. I said yes to anything he wanted. Just let me go. He threw about $500 worth of cash at me. I didn't pick it up. I just ran for the door. I got to my car and locked the doors immediately. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway as fast as I could. I could see the man standing on his porch in my mirror, just watching me. Just standing there in the darkness with that hollow expression. I drove home with my hands shaking. I drove way too fast. I ran a few red lights. I just needed to be home. I needed to be safe. The next day I went to work and told my boss what happened. I told him everything. The mannequins, the gun, the things the man made me do. I thought he would call the police. I thought he would be horrified. Instead, he just laughed. He said it sounded like a prank. He said college kids do weird stuff sometimes. He offered me a different job. He said I could work in the kitchen making pizzas instead of delivering. I didn't argue with him. I just accepted the offer and moved on with my life. But I couldn't stop thinking about that house. I couldn't stop imagining what would have happened if I had refused, if I had tried to run earlier, if that man had decided he didn't want to let me leave. I checked the news hoping to hear something, hoping to find out what happened to that place. But there was nothing, no arrests, no reports, nothing. A few months went by and I had settled into my new routine working in the kitchen. I was making pizzas and occasionally answering phones when orders came in. It was safer. It was more predictable. I thought I had escaped something dark. Then I got a phone call. A Friday night. It was my boss telling me I had to go make a delivery. One of the other drivers called in sick. It was the last shift of the night. Just one delivery and then I could go home. I wanted to say no, but I needed the money. So I grabbed a pizza and got back in my car. The GPS took me out to the outskirts of town, somewhere I had never delivered before. The roads got darker and more isolated the further I went. Just farms and fields and the occasional house set back from the road. I was following the GPS carefully because I had never been to this address before. Then the weather changed. Lightning flashed across the sky. The rain started coming down hard, real hard, like the sky was opening up and dumping everything at once. I could barely see the road in front of me. The wipers could barely keep up with the rain. I slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. I sat there for about 15 minutes waiting for the rain to let up a little bit. When it finally started to ease off, I continued driving. The GPS said I was getting close. I could see the house through the rain. It was a 2-story wooden structure. It looked old, kind of run down, isolated, surrounded by darkness and farmland. There were no lights on inside. The whole place looked like nobody was home. But the customer had called in the order, so someone had to be there. I grabbed the pizza and walked up to the porch. My clothes were soaked. I was shivering. I rang the doorbell and waited. Nothing. No answer. I rang it again. Still nothing. I looked through the glass window on the door to see if I could see anyone inside. It was pitch black in there. But as my eyes adjusted, I started to see something. A figure. Someone moving around inside the dark house. I stepped back from the door. Instinct was telling me something was wrong. But before I could leave, the door creaked open and a woman appeared. She looked terrified. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. She grabbed my hand immediately. She said there was someone inside her house, someone hiding. She said she had called the police, but they hadn't arrived yet. She asked if I would stay with her until they came. She was shaking. She was genuinely afraid. I could sense real fear in her voice. This wasn't an act. This woman was terrified. I wanted to help, but I was afraid too. If there really was someone in the house, then what was I supposed to do? I didn't have any weapon except the small pocket knife in my back pocket. But I couldn't just leave her. So I asked her if the person was armed. She said she didn't know. She said she only saw a shadow. She said I had to help her find him. She said he might try to escape. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside the house. The woman locked the door behind me. The interior was dark except for the occasional flash of lightning from the windows. It created this strobe effect that made everything look distorted and wrong. A long corridor stretched ahead of me. The woman pointed upstairs. She said she saw a shadow in one of the bedrooms. She said that's where he was hiding. She said I had to help her find him. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and started walking toward the stairs. The floorboards creaked with every step. There was complete silence in the house except for the sound of the thunder and rain outside. But underneath that, I could hear my own heartbeat. It was pounding in my ears. I started climbing the stairs. The wooden steps groaned under my weight. Each step seemed to take forever. The shadows from my flashlight danced across the walls. I felt like something was going to jump out at any moment. At the top of the stairs, there was a hallway with several doors. The woman was behind me now. She pointed to the first door. She said she saw the shadow in that room. I reached for the doorknob and turned it slowly. The door swung open and suddenly a figure rushed out of the darkness. A man. He came at me fast and hard. He pushed me backward and I fell hard onto the floor. I hit my head on something. Pain shot through my skull. Everything went blurry for a second. When my vision cleared, the man was already running down the stairs. I could hear the woman yelling. She was pointing down toward the basement stairs. She said he was trying to escape. I pulled myself up slowly. My head was throbbing. I was dizzy, but I forced myself to move. I told the woman to go wait by the front door. I told her to make sure the man didn't get past. I said the police were probably close by now. Just hang on. The woman went back downstairs and I heard her shouting about locking the doors. I moved toward the basement stairs carefully. There was a door at the bottom. It was slightly open. I could hear movement behind it. I went down the stairs and pushed the door open. The basement was dark except for a small window that let in some gray light from outside. And then I saw him. There was a man sitting in the corner of the basement, curled up in a ball. He was thin, emaciated almost. His eyes were wide and filled with fear. Real fear. Genuine terror. He wasn't acting. This man was absolutely terrified. I asked him who he was. He said he came looking for food. He said he thought the house was empty, so he came inside looking for something to eat. He said he was sorry. He said he would leave. He said please just let him go. I told him to come with me. I said the police were on their way and everything would be okay. But he didn't move. He just kept looking at me with those terrified eyes. Then he said something that made my blood go cold. He said the woman wasn't what I thought she was. He said the person I should be afraid of wasn't him. He said he saw her stabbing someone. He said he saw her stabbing a man in the bedroom upstairs. He said she was the murderer. My mind couldn't process what he was saying. I wanted to tell him he was crazy. I wanted to tell him that the woman was the victim here, but something in his voice made me believe him. Something in his eyes made me think he was telling the truth. I told him I needed to call the police. I told him to stay here. I turned toward the basement door. That's when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. The woman appeared at the bottom of the basement stairs, but she wasn't the same woman who had been so afraid moments before. This woman was different. She was wearing a white nightgown, and the nightgown was covered in blood, fresh blood, bright red blood that was still wet. Her eyes were wide and wild. She was smiling, actually smiling, with this manic expression on her face. Saliva was drooling from her mouth. She was holding a gun, a real gun pointed directly at me. She laughed. She said I had done such a good job finding this sneaky pig for her. She said I deserved a tip. She said this was so much fun. She said it was getting better and better. I realized in that moment what had happened. This was a trap. The whole thing was a trap. The fake phone call, the scared woman act, the intruder in the house. All of it was designed to lure someone inside. All of it was designed to catch another victim. I looked at the thin man in the corner. He knew. He had known the whole time. He had watched this woman kill her husband. He had hidden in the basement trying to survive. And then I came along and helped her hunt him down. I had to do something. I had to act fast before she pulled that trigger. I looked around the basement desperately. There was firewood stacked in the corner. Logs. I grabbed one. I held it like a baseball bat. The woman raised the gun. She was pointing it at the thin man first. She was going to shoot him. I didn't think about it. I just swung. I swung that log as hard as I could. I hit her in the face. The impact was sickening. I heard her jaw break. I heard her teeth crack. She screamed and fell to the floor. The gun dropped from her hand. She was bleeding, crying, yelling incoherently. I kicked the gun away from her and I ran upstairs. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called 911. I told them everything. I told them there was a woman with a gun and a dead body in the house. The police arrived within minutes. They arrested the woman. They found her husband in the upstairs bedroom. He had been stabbed multiple times. It was horrific. The injuries were extensive. The police said it looked like she had killed him in a rage. The thin man turned out to be homeless. He had broken in looking for food and shelter. He had witnessed the murder and tried to hide. He was going to testify against the woman. But first, he needed medical attention. The woman had been hunting him through the house before I arrived. The story made the local news. It was everywhere for a while. Woman kills husband, frames him for home invasion, lures strangers into her trap. It became infamous in our small town. The woman was convicted. She's still in prison as far as I know. But I was done. I stopped delivering pizzas that night. I couldn't go back to that job. I couldn't handle not knowing what was waiting on the other side of the next door. For a long time after that incident, I was paranoid. I was jumpier. I didn't like being alone in enclosed spaces. I didn't like darkness. I would have nightmares about that woman's face, that smile, that gun pointing at me. I still wake up sometimes imagining her standing at the foot of my bed, just watching me, just waiting. I know it's irrational. I know she's locked up and can't hurt me. But the fear doesn't go away. Not really. Not completely. That job changed me. It showed me how darkness hides. It showed me how monsters look normal, how they smile and talk and order pizza just like regular people. You never know who's going to open the door when you knock. You never know if you're walking into someone's home or into a trap. I still think about the other drivers I worked with. I wonder how many of them had their own horror stories. How many of them had experienced something they never told anyone about. Pizza delivery sounds like a normal job, but out in the rural areas it's different. Every house is isolated. Every customer is a stranger. Every knock on the door is a gamble. I work in retail now. It's safer. It's more predictable. I don't have to go to houses anymore. I don't have to walk into darkness alone. I don't have to wonder what's waiting for me on the other side of the door. And I never eat pizza anymore. Every time I smell it, I think about that night. I think about that woman. I think about the look on that thin man's face when he realized he was going to die. I think about how close I came to becoming another victim. People ask me why I quit pizza delivery. They ask if something bad happened. And I tell them yes. Something very bad happened. But I don't go into the details. I don't tell them about the mannequin house or the murdered husband or the woman with the gun. Because sometimes the truth is harder to believe than fiction. Sometimes reality is scarier than any ghost story. And sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who are smart enough to hide who they really are until it's too late to escape.